Hey, all right, I've been asked to get this underway, so please take a seat. Kia ora, everybody, and welcome to this session on building a workforce for the future. For those of you who I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name's Ben Gerritsen. I'm the General Manager Customer and Regulatory at Claris, also on the board of GasNZ. We've got a fantastic group of speakers for you today. I'm sure you'll agree. Glen Bennett, who's an MP with the Labour Party. We've got Greg Wallace, the Chief Executive of Master Plumbers, and Leal Sims, the Head of People and Culture at Powerco. And I know they're all really passionate about this topic of how do we build a workforce for the future. We've already heard in the last couple of days about some of the issues the gas industry specifically is facing around recruiting new people into this industry, really presenting it as an exciting proposition for people's career development. We've also heard a little bit about some of the issues we have around succession planning and actually kind of transfer of knowledge from some of the really experienced professionals we have in the industry to some of the younger people coming through. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Glen, who's, for those of you who don't know Glen Bennett, he is a Labour Party list MP who's based here in Taranaki. Glen is the Labour's Associate Spokesperson for Energy and also the Spokesperson for Economic Development. So he has a really good lens on these issues around workforce development and the energy sector. Glen has lots of relationships, obviously, here in the Taranaki and is striving to build connections throughout the community so that people feel like they belong and can actively participate and reach their full potential. So please welcome Glen.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou, and it's thank you for having me, and just want to acknowledge this beautiful setting, even though there's a black recovery. No, as you know, there's such a beautiful setting here in Taranaki, and it is home, and I want to acknowledge ngā iwi o Taranaki, the 8 iwi of Taranaki, and those who have gone before them, but also to recognise that, we often talk about Taranaki being the place to, the best place to live, to work, to play. And I'm one of those imports that arrived here 24 years ago and came for 6 months. And the place just kind of grows on you. So for those of you who've been here for 2 days, welcome. You may never leave, but that's okay. We'll welcome you in. I want to now acknowledge GasNZ in terms of hosting this space. I also want to recognise the challenges that we are facing as a country, as a globe, whether it be workforce and so many other things, but also in our energy sector. And thank you for being here and engaging with us today. As has been said, I am this Labour spokesperson for economic development and associate spokesperson on energy. And it's a really interesting role because in the economic development role, it kind of covers almost everything in terms of you get around the country and what is economic development? It is a community group. It is a gas organisation. It is a church group. It is a business. It covers so many things. And so to be in this space, talking about workforce in the future, it's really exciting, and as you would know, it's really challenging. And I guess an opening reflection is that the world is just in a huge transition at the moment, and we are the lucky ones who are in the middle of that transition, whether it's geopolitics and looking around what's going on in Africa or Eastern Europe or the Middle East and other parts of the world, whether it's technology and AI and what that looks like in terms of workforce, but also what that looks like in terms of business models and innovation, the future of work, whether you're a factory worker, whether you're a rig worker, whether you work in hospitality or in the health sector, everything is in a motion of change and moving. And then, of course, Wouldn't be a politician without talking about infrastructure and the challenges facing us, the deficit, and what it looks like right now because of the challenges, I guess, that we haven't faced over the years on both sides of politics. We've got climate change, we've got recovery from pandemics and future pandemics, we've got our social inequalities, our resources, our political polarisation is something I want to acknowledge in terms of. In New Zealand, I still think we're doing okay. You may sometimes think we're not, especially 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Don't watch Parliament TV; it's not worth it. But it really is around looking at, particularly American model and others, where it is the right and the right. Like, who's right? And it's actually how do we in New Zealand maintain a bipartisan approach on many things, but we'll also differ, but also look at how do we actually work together to have a centrist view of facing our future together. And so I guess my thoughts this morning are around our responsibility as leaders, because all of us in this room are leaders and we have a role to play in our just transition. We have a role to play in the decarbonisation of Aotearoa and the world, but also we have a responsibility to play in terms of what the workforce looks like into the future. And I just want to mention a few things that we did do in government, and not to say look at us, look what we did, but to actually to reflect on these for a moment, because these are 3 initiatives that, as I get around the country in my economic development portfolio and energy, is around these three initiatives, which actually around being future focused. So often we're blinkered and we're caught up in the here and now and our heads down. But the challenge, I believe, for me as a politician, the challenge for you in leadership roles, the challenges for us who take on these significant roles, is how do we go from this to lifting our gaze and looking to the future? And when we do that, how do we not only look and lift our gaze, but also how do we be courageous in some of the decisions that we must make? Now, we instigated industry transformation plans. Now, these were looking at key sectors around what does transition look like. And when I say transition, it's around workforce, it's around climate, it's around the future of work. We looked at agri-tech, digital tech, advanced manufacturing, food and beverage, forestry and wood processing, construction and tourism. And we went with the industries and brought them together, from workforce to management, to companies, and we said, where are we going in terms of our future? And then from there, the industries themselves developed plans, developed a pathway and a roadmap to what the workforce would and could look like. They worked on policies and ideas of actually how they could transform their workforce so that we don't just sit and hold and wait until the last minute when there's very few people left in terms of what it looks like building our workforce and our business models. Within this, we had our regional skills leadership groups. I'm not sure if many people, because we had a mix of people, thank you, from all over who were on that. So the regional skills leadership groups. And as I've got around, again, I was in Invercargill 2 weeks ago, and the significance that made around looking at a place like Southland, looking at a place like the West Coast, looking at a place like Taranaki, bringing industry, bringing stakeholders together to talk about what does it look like for us moving forward, around what are the skill shortages, around what are the barriers and the roadblocks in terms of moving forward, and then around, again, lifting your gaze to find a way to the future. Now, there's always challenges and things that don't go correctly or right, but I still believe that the industry transformation plans, the regional skills leadership groups, are key initiatives that can actually transform the way our workforce looks into the future, where we actually don't just happen upon it, but we actually build that future together. And for me, working together is important. The third one is around just transition. Now, I'm a politician, but I'm always willing to admit where mistakes have been made. And our just transition work, for anyone from Taranaki will know that we proceeded with this in 2019 and 2020 and looked at a roadmap to 2050, which was supported by government. Southland was then brought on, Northland was then brought on, and the plans were good. And the lifting our gaze and building a vision for the future was good. What the workforce looked like, what are the levers, what are the challenges, what are the opportunity, what are the risks. But I think the challenge and mistake that was made from a government perspective was then we did not fund the next part of that process. So a picture is wonderful, a beautiful 2050 image looks great, but it's actually developing a plan. It's then implementing the plan. And I think that has been the challenge that I will admit is something that I would like to get right into the future. The reason I say that is because I think and I believe that our regional skills leadership groups, that our industry transformation plans, that our just transition plan is actually, when we get out of the way, to be honest, when politicians get out of the way, is actually around building that future together. And that's what I want to leave us on this morning, because in leadership, it's actually around having the courage, but it's also taking the opportunities, and it's also about collaboration and how important that is. And here in Taranaki, I think there's a couple of examples that I also want to finish on that we don't want to do again. And this was where the just transition concept came from. So the 1980s, for anyone who was living here, we have a township just down the road called Waitara. We have a township on the other side of the Maunga called Pātea. And almost overnight, because the closing of the freezing works, almost overnight, those townships were ravaged. Unemployment rose, people left. And I believe that was when leadership wasn't done right, where actually it was a moment in time where I guess the umbilical cord was cut and those jobs are lost. And we see some examples now. If you look in the central North Island, if you look down at Timaru, it's slightly different. But the leadership challenge and looking at things like just transition, looking at things like regional skills leadership groups, is how do we not let that happen again? How do you in this room, I believe, lean in to the challenges that are facing us, but also lean into people potentially like politicians, people who might not sit in the same worldview that you sit in, and I'm speaking to myself as well, so that we can work together, because I believe that building our workforce into the future is around lifting our gaze and building a vision, but it's also that collaboration, that leaning into each other to understand and learn and then build our future. So in closing, our call is to step up and be leaders. Our call is to be a voice. Our call is to have those hard conversations, but our call also is to listen and understand where everyone is coming from, so that we can build a more prosperous, a more vibrant, a more sustainable future where everyone has an opportunity. In this ever-changing world, as it moves so quickly, as leaders, let's lift our gaze, and as leaders, let's lean in to those challenging and courageous conversations. Kia ora tātou.